The Untouchables. Who were they and why they became untouchables? By Babasaheb Ambedkar. Part 5, Chapter 14. Why should beef eating make broken men untouchables? The stoppage of beef eating by the Brahmins and the non Brahmins and the continued use thereof by the broken men had produced a situation which was different from the old. This difference lay in the fact that while in the old situation everybody ate beef, in the new situation one section did not and another did. The difference was a glaring difference. Everybody could see it. It divided society as nothing else did before. All the same, this different need not have given rise to such extreme division of society as is marked by untouchability. It could have remained a social difference. There are many cases where different sections of the community differ in their foods. What one likes, the other dislikes, and yet this difference does not create a bar between the two. There must therefore be some special reason why in India the difference between the settled and the broken men in the matters of beef eating created a bar between the two. What can that be? The answer is that if beef eating had remained a secular affair, a mere matter of individual taste, such a bar between those who ate beef and those who did not would not have arisen. Unfortunately, beef eating, instead of being treated as a purely secular matter, was made a matter of religion. This happened because the Brahmins made the cow a sacred animal. This made beef eating a sacrilege. The broken men, being guilty of sacrilege, necessarily became beyond the pale of society. The answer may not be quite clear to those who have no idea of the scope and function of religion in the life of the society. They may ask, why should religion make such a difference? It will be clear if the following parts regarding the scope and function of religion are borne in mind. To begin with the definition of religion, there is one universal feature which characterizes all religions. This feature lies in religion being a unified system of practices and beliefs which one relate to sacred things and two which unite into a single community all those who adhere to them. To put it slightly differently, there are two elements in every religion. One is that religion is inseparable from sacred things. The other is that religion is a collective thing inseparable from society. The first element in religion presupposes the classification of all things, real and ideal, which are the subject matter of man's thoughts, into two distinct classes which are generally designated by two distinct terms, the sacred and the profane, popularly spoken of as secular. This defines the scope of religion. For understanding the function of religion, the following points regarding things sacred should be noted. The first thing to note is that things sacred are not merely higher than or superior in dignity and status to those that are profane. They are just different. The sacred and the profane do not belong to the same class. There is a complete dichotomy between the two. As Professor Durkheim observes, the traditional opposition of good and bad is nothing beside this, for the good and the bad are only two opposed species of the same class. Nearly morals, just as sickness and health, are two different aspects of the same order of facts. Life, while the sacred and the profane have always and everywhere been conceived by the human mind as two distinct classes, as two worlds between which there is nothing in common. The curious may want to know what has led men to see in this world this dichotomy between the sacred and the profane. We must, however, refuse to enter this into discussion, and it is unnecessary for the immediate purpose we have in mind. Confining ourselves to the issue, the next thing to note is that the circle of sacred objects is not fixed. Its extent varies infinitely from religion to religion. Gods and spirits are not the only sacred things. A rock, a tree, an animal, spring, pebble, piece of wood, house, a word, anything can be sacred. Things sacred are always associated with interdictions, otherwise called taboos. To quote Professor Durkheim again, sacred things are those which the interdictions protect and isolate. Profane things, those to which these interdictions are applied and which must remain at a distance from the first. Religious interdicts take multiple forms. Most important of these is the interdiction on contact. The interdiction on contact rests upon the principle that the profane should never touch the sacred. Contact may be established in a variety of ways other than touch. A look is a means of contact. That is why the sight of sacred things is prohibited to the profane in certain cases. For instance, women are not allowed to see certain things which are regarded as sacred. The word, that is, the breath which forms part of man and which spreads outside him, is another means of contact. This is why the profane is prohibited to address the sacred things or to utter them. For instance, the Veda must be uttered only by the Brahmin and not by the Shudra. An exceptionally intimate contact is the one resulting from the absorption of food. Hence comes the interdiction against creating the sacred animals or vegetables. The interdictions relating to the sacred are not open to discussion. They are beyond discussion and must be accepted without question. The sacred is untouchable in the sense that is beyond the pale of debate. All that one can do is to respect and obey. Lastly, the interdictions relating to the sacred are binding on all. They are not maxims, they are injunctions. They are obligatory but not in the ordinary sense of the word. They partake of the nature of a categorical imperative. Their breach is more than a crime, it is a sacrilege. The above summary should be enough for an understanding of the scope and function of religion. It is unnecessary to enlarge upon the subject further. The analysis of the working of the laws of the sacred, which is the core of religion, should enable anyone to see that my question and my answer to the question why beef eating should make the broken men untouchables is the correct one. All that is necessary to reach the answer I have proposed is to read the analysis of the working of the laws of the sacred with the cow as the sacred object. It will be found that untouchability is the result of the breach of the interdiction against the eating of the sacred animal, namely the cow. As has been said, the Brahmins made the cow a sacred animal. They did not stop to make a difference between a living cow and a dead cow. The cow was sacred, living or dead. Beef eating was not merely a crime. If it was only a crime, it would have involved nothing more than a punishment. Beef eating was made a sacrilege. Anyone who treated the cow as profane was guilty of sin and unfit for association. The broken men who continued to eat beef became guilty of sacrilege. Once the cow became sacred and the broken men continued to eat beef, there was no other fate left for the broken men except to be treated unfit for association, that is, as untouchables. Before closing the subject, it may be desirable to dispose of possible objections to the thesis. Two such objections to the thesis appear obvious. One is what evidence is there that the broken men did eat the flesh of the dead cow? The second is why did they not give up beef eating when the Brahmins and non-Brahmins abandoned it? These questions have an important bearing upon the theory of the origin of untouchability advanced in this book and must therefore be dealt with. The first question is relevant as well as crucial. If the broken men were eating beef from the very beginning, then obviously the theory cannot stand. For if they were eating beef from very beginning and nonetheless were not treated as untouchables, to say that the broken men became untouchables because of beef eating would be illogical if not senseless. The second question is relevant if not crucial. If the Brahmins gave up beef eating and the non-Brahmins imitated them, why did the broken men not do the same? If the law made the killing of the cow a capital sin because the cow became a sacred animal to the Brahmins and non-Brahmins, why were the broken men not stopped from eating beef? If they had been stopped from eating beef, there would have been no untouchability. The answer to the first question is that even during the period when beef eating was common to both the settled tribesmen and the broken men, a system had grown up whereby the settled community ate fresh beef while the broken men ate the flesh of the dead cow. We have no positive evidence to show that members of the settled community never ate the flesh of the dead cow, but we have negative evidence which shows that the dead cow had become an exclusive possession and prerequisite of the broken men. The evidence consists of facts which relate to the Mahars of the Maharashtra, to whom reference has already been made. As has already been pointed out, the Mahars of Maharashtra claim the right to take the dead animal. This right they claim against every Hindu in the village. This means that no Hindu can eat the flesh of his own animal when it dies. He has to surrender it to the Mahar. This is merely another way of stating that when eating beef was a common practice, the Mahars ate dead beef and the Hindus ate fresh beef. The only question that arises is whether what is true of the present is also true of the ancient past. Can this fact which is true of the Maharashtra can be taken as a typical arrangement between the settled and broken men throughout India? In this connection, reference may be made to the traditional current among the Mahars according to which they claimed that they were given 52 rights against the Hindu village by the Muslim king of Bedar. Assuming that they were given by the king of Bedar, the king obviously did not create them for the first time. They must have existed from the ancient past. What the king did was merely confirm them. This means that the practice of the broken men eating dead meat and the settled tribes eating fresh meat must have grown in the ancient past. That such an arrangement should grow up is certainly most natural. The second settled community was a wealthy community with agriculture and cattle as a means of livelihood. The broken men were a community of paupers with no means of livelihood and entirely dependent upon the settled community. The principal item of food for both was beef. It was possible for the settled community to kill an animal for food because it was possessed of cattle. The broken men could not, for they had none. Would it be unnatural in these circumstances for the settled community to have agreed to give up the broken men its dead animals as part of their wages of watch and ward? Surely not. It can therefore be taken for granted that in the ancient past, when both the settled community and the broken men did eat beef, the former ate fresh beef and the latter dead. And this system represented a universal state of affairs throughout India and was not confined to Maharashtra alone. This disposes of the first question. To turn to the second objection. The law made by the Gupta emperors was intended to prevent those who killed cows. It did not apply to the broken men, for they did not kill the cow. They only ate the dead cow. Their conduct did not contravene the law against cow killing. The practice of eating the flesh of the dead cow, therefore, was allowed to continue. Nor did their conduct contravene the doctrine of ahimsa, assuming that it has nothing to do with the abandonment of beef eating by the Brahmins and the non Brahmins. Killing the cow was himsa, but eating the dead cow was not. The broken men had therefore no cause for feeling qualms of conscience in continuing to eat the dead cow. Neither the law nor the doctrine of himsa could interdict what they were doing, for what they were doing was neither contrary to law nor to the doctrine. As to why they did not imitate the Brahmins and the non-Brahmins, the answer is twofold. In the first place, imitation was too costly. They could not afford it. The flesh of the dead cow was their principal sustenance. Without it, they would starve. In the second place, carrying the dead cow had become an obligation, though originally it was a privilege. As they could not escape the carrying of the dead cow, they did not mind using the flesh as food in the manner in which they were doing previously. The objections, therefore, do not invalidate the thesis in any way. The end.